So we absolutely think, so NUS's view that is that the voting age should be reduced to 16. But I suppose, given that there aren't really, I anticipate there won't be loads of people dissenting on this panel. I'll give you some of the arguments that I hear against. I gave evidence in a select committee a couple of weeks ago about democratic engagement and the lack of young people's participation in democracy. And one of the things that they said to me there was, surely if we reduce the voting age, even fewer young people will vote, because young people are much less likely to vote now. So if you reduce the voting age, you're just increasing the number of people who won't turn out to vote. I think that's an interesting argument. I don't think it's one that holds much truck with me. I think that actually we should reduce the voting age, but we need to couple it with real political education and not just citizenship. I mean, I didn't even get citizenship when I was in school. But political education talks about where our political systems come from and where our right to vote has come from, and the people who've given up their rights and their privileges and their lives to give us the right to vote. But also what political parties are and how they're created and where they came from, because I didn't know any of that actually until I came into this job. One of the things that people say is that, you know, young people can't be trusted to vote because they're not mature enough. And my argument, I suppose, always is that I know lots of people who aren't 16 who I would consider not mature enough to vote, but I don't get to choose. So I guess those are some of the big myths. And I think that expanding suffrage, I think, is just generally. I don't think it can ever be a bad thing, but I do think that we need to look really carefully at not just extending that franchise to young people, but how we support them to be able to vote. And I think for me that goes hand in hand with secure internet access to voting and giving people the opportunity to vote online, if we can ensure that it's secure, because it happens all over the world. I think that's not just important for, I suppose, my generation, because I do everything online. It's rare to see me speaking actually in public in real life. But also for people with disabilities, people with access issues, and people who live in rural areas like the one that I grew up in. Actually, our voting system, I think, can be inaccessible and it's kind of archaic. So yes, vote to 16s and then some more.
Well, since my time at Liberty, I've come across so many issues which have a disproportionate impact on young people, whether it be child curfews or mosquito devices, sonic noise devices designed to stop children from congregating in public, to ASBOs and lack stop and search powers. And I think probably our political classes would find it less easy to ignore the impact of their policies on young people if older teenagers were able to air their grievances at the ballot box. We know through our work at Liberty that young people are really politically engaged. They get involved in emailing local MPs, in social media asks. We know that they're engaged. We know that they're active. I think it's about time that they're able to really officially participate in the political process. We allow young people as a society to get married, to enter civil partnerships, to join the army, and really, if we have those expectations and we're allowing them to participate in this way, it's about time they were able to sort of formally participate in our democratic process.
Well, just again, not to be downbeat, because young people have been mobilising. I mean, 2010, when 52,000 students took to the streets in November, was one of the biggest student protests in a generation, and that was followed by a wave of occupations and forms of direct action. So they are, and we've got UK Uncut as well, for example, so people are doing that. There are attacks on their civil liberties, people are deterred by kettling, by the threat of police attacks, and we've got to remember, and we've got to remind people, the role of the police is to facilitate peaceful protest. And all too often the Met don't seem to realise that. They're there to just clamp down on protest. So we need to make sure that's thoughtful, but just find that, when I go to sixth forms, when I go to schools, I meet lots of young people who are very savvy, who know they've got a very difficult future ahead of them, they'll be worse off than their parents, first generation to be in that situation for over a century. But they have lots of anger and they have lots of fear, but there's one thing missing, and that's hope. And without hope, people give up. They yell at their television sets. All that anger's turned on their neighbour, and so much of modern politics is blame the unemployed person, blame the public sector worker, blame the immigrant. The politics of divide and rule, the politics of envy almost. If you're struggling, you know, that person's not struggling enough. You've been mugged, they need to be mugged more. So we need politics of hope, politics which is about actually improving people's lives. And for many young people, there isn't that sense there. It isn't connecting their experiences. It's not answering things like housing and jobs and education. It just seems to be about making their lives worse. And I think we need to change that, and that's why I'd always encourage young people to draw on our brilliant tradition of peaceful protest, civil disobedience, and organise to stand up for their rights. But all of us have a responsibility to give people hope if that's going to happen.